I need this coffee. Woo! Somehow if I had this in my hand, I feel better about everything. So this is a question that came in on Instagram. This is about having babies after a lung transplant. The question is, can you, essentially? So the answer is yes, you can. However, it is kind of a different story as to maybe the best way to go about it. And I actually looked into doing this. My IVF journey has been really, really weird, and it's its own story. I considered IVF with pulmonary hypertension. I was going to freeze my eggs. Let me first answer your question so I don't go off on some crazy tangent. So the answer is yes, you can have babies. It is not recommended that you actually carry the baby because you are on so much medication that the medication can hurt the baby in the sense that it can cause birth defects, it can cause a lot of problems. So, and this is all from what I've learned and my understanding, of course, best way to do this is through a surrogate and through IVF, in my opinion, because again, carrying the baby is quite dangerous. So what you would do is you would find a surrogacy agency, or you maybe know somebody who's willing to carry your baby. You'd go through IVF, and then you would freeze your eggs and either save your eggs or just go through with having a child. Now, a couple of things, and these are the things that were kind of reasons why I didn't want to move forward. Number one, my life was just saved, and I am very nervous to mess with what I have just been given. And so, in a way, it felt like I was asking too much to put my body through something else. And IVF, though it can be done in a certain way that's safer, it's still putting your body through something quite intense. And after a transplant, I'm trying so hard to just stay well as it is that I didn't know if I wanted to put my body through something else because it's hormones. There's a lot you have to go through, and then there's anesthesia for them to take out the eggs. This is all the wrong way of explaining this, but anyway, this is taking out the eggs. So there's a lot that your body has to go through. So I was very hesitant with regard to putting my body through that. Two, the surrogacy thing is that although it's expensive, if you go through a surrogacy agency, it makes it doable because somebody else can carry this baby. So you don't have to worry about the medicine affecting the child. But then the third issue for me is that kids tend to get sick a lot. And they're supposed to get sick because they're building their immune system. So them getting sick is totally natural. And you want your kid to get sick essentially to build their immune system. But when you have a transplant, you really have to be careful to not get sick because your immune system is heavily suppressed and you don't want to end up with something that your body just can't fight. In a way, I thought to myself, it may make sense to pursue this, but ultimately it may not because of all the fear that comes with it in the sense of, does this really make sense? I've just been given my life back. Do I want to go and mess with things again? So again, in order to answer your question, yes, it is possible. And for example, if having a baby in your life, is what you want out of this life, then I completely understand the concept of taking that risk. It makes sense, right? You take that risk for something that you want so badly in this life, potentially. For me, it has never been that I have to have a baby. It's always been if I met the right person, if it was the right time, if the opportunity was right, okay, maybe it makes sense to have a baby. But if it doesn't, if it's not the right person, if it's not the right time, then fine, then I'm not meant to have a baby. So I've lived a lot with that what's meant to be will be kind of mentality. But again, because of that, it's allowed for me to kind of say, all right, maybe that's not the path for me. Now, I also had to overcome this with pulmonary hypertension because I remember being hugely disappointed when somebody came in the room. I was first diagnosed. They're like, you have a serious illness called pulmonary hypertension. I was like, I don't know what this is. And they're like, and you will not be able to have babies. And I was like, and that dream, you're like, oh my God, but I was supposed to have babies and I don't understand. And now they're telling you this. So I had all of maybe 3 to 5 minutes to process the fact that it was probably not going to happen, that I probably wouldn't have babies in this life. And then 5 minutes later, the doctors came in. They said, we actually think you're never going to leave the hospital again. And I was like, oh, wow, that is way worse than not having babies. So it made me have to overcome my sadness and it made me have to overcome the situation really fast because I was like, wow, losing your life just all of a sudden trumps not having babies really quickly. So I never really processed the idea, but again, it's fine. I think that I'm so grateful for what I've been given that it's ultimately it's okay either way. And that, again, I think if it is something that is so important to you in this life, I can understand the risk. I can understand all of it. And everything has to make sense to you. And for me, this is what makes sense for me, is to not necessarily put my body through that. But again, the answer being yes, you can, and there's always a way to do something. And there's a way to do something in a in a healthier way too. For example, and then I'll finish this video because it's like 25 minutes long. But for example, instead of being jam-packed with hormones, right, for IVF, maybe you say, I'd like to have half the amount of hormones. I did a round of IVF many years back with pH. I took a chance, but I did it without hormones at all. I also did it without anesthesia when they extracted the eggs, which is not typically done, but I was so scared of anesthesia with pH. And I was also really scared of hormones with pH. So we got actually surprisingly lucky because I think I'm just very fertile, but we got lucky in that we got 2 eggs, but you need to get like 25 of these things for 2 to survive, not 2. So ultimately nothing survived, but I did try it. But there is a way essentially to do this with reduced hormones, which would make you less likely to have issues. Then you'd be monitored by your team. So if it's a lung transplant, you'd be monitored by your lung transplant team. And there's always a way to do things. And I guess it's just weighing what's more important and what is more important to you at what time and what you feel is right for you versus what the right thing to do is, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answered the question. If you guys have any other questions about anything that I can help with, please let me know. And I will do my best to answer them. Goodbye, have a nice day, and cheers with coffee that I haven't been able to drink for 15 years. That's not true. I've been drinking coffee for 4 years now, but I went about 15 years with no coffee. So I really, really, really appreciate my cup of coffee. Anyway, have a beautiful day, and I will see you soon.